Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Madeline Brooks woke up at the same time every day, passed by the mirror with the same tired look, wore the same clothes, made coffee for Thomas, and followed her routine with the punctuality of an old clock. It was as if life had gone on automatic. 20 years ago, the marriage seemed promising. They had known each other since college, built a house together, raised a daughter, overcome debts, sleepless nights, medical treatments, and small victories that only those who go through them together can truly appreciate. In the beginning, there were touches, glances, plans. But the years stacked silence after silence, conversations turned into practical messages, and the couple's bed became neutral territory. She couldn't pinpoint the exact moment when she started feeling invisible. Maybe it was when Harper, their daughter, went to college and the house felt emptier. Or when Thomas started coming home later, always with the excuse of traffic or a meeting that ran late. The fact is, over time, the small gestures, once meaningful, disappeared. No flowers, no compliments, no surprises. She remained there, present and loyal, but with the feeling that she was just a functional piece of furniture. She paid bills, took care of the house, smiled at family gatherings. Inside, she wondered whether this was really the future she had chosen or just what was left of an old decision. The days repeated themselves. And in that repetition, she began to pay more attention to the people around her. She noticed how other women her age made drastic decisions. One friend filed for divorce and opened a studio. Another moved to another state and started teaching cooking classes. Madeline wondered how they had the courage. She envied their freedom, and soon that envy turned into a secret desire to do something different. But there still lacked a trigger, something to shake her. And that came in the form of a smile. A simple smile. Marcus Cole was new at the company. He arrived with that confident posture of someone who already knew how to please. He looked people in the eye, gave compliments without exaggeration, asked questions that seemed to matter. And what started as kindness quickly became constant attention. Madeline found herself fixing her hair before going to the office, choosing clothes more carefully, putting on lipstick even without the intention to go out. When she realized, she was already waiting for him more than she wanted to admit. Elevator chats, coffee breaks, glances during meetings. Marcus saw her. And that was exactly what she missed. One day, after an important presentation, he praised her with a compliment that echoed in her head for days. He said she had magnetic energy. No man had spoken like that to her in years. That stirred parts of her that had been dormant. And when he started sending messages outside of work hours, she didn't avoid it. On the contrary. She created internal justifications, rationalized it. He's just a friend. It's just conversation. But deep down, she had already crossed an emotional line. Thomas, at home, seemed even more distant. They dined in silence, he with his phone in hand, she with her heart somewhere else. She started daydreaming. Imagining what it would be like to leave everything behind. Creating scenarios where she said goodbye, packed a suitcase, and left with Marcus. The mix of freedom and fear made her feel alive, pulsating. And that feeling was addictive. For the first time in years, she felt something was about to happen, something that would change everything. She didn't know how or when, but one certainty grew inside her: she couldn't keep living in that dull life much longer. And while she smiled at Thomas at the table, she read Marcus's messages on her phone. It was right there, in that routine broken by secrets, that the real plan began to take shape. A plan she believed was her chance to start over. But in reality, it was the beginning of her biggest mistake. The connection between Madeline and Marcus intensified too fast to seem casual. The secret meeting started with quick coffees, but soon evolved into long lunches, excuses for fake meetings, and visits to the same discreet hotel, always with calculated times and the care to erase any trace. They both knew what they were doing. And that awareness, instead of slowing things down, increased the desire. The forbidden became fuel. Madeline felt more alive than ever within that game, mixing adrenaline, charm, and the promise of a fresh start. Marcus said everything she wanted to hear. Called her beautiful, intelligent, special. Said he was stuck in a loveless marriage and that with her it was different. And although it sounded rehearsed, she believed it. Wanted to believe it. Their complicity grew to the point where they started dreaming together. In whispered conversations, they spoke about moving to another state, maybe another country, starting a business, buying a small house, leaving everything behind. They laughed at the possibility of living a life without masks. It was an intoxicating illusion, and Madeline could no longer see the point in continuing to maintain a house filled with silence and routine. The plan took shape slowly, but with alarming precision. They would make it seem normal until the day of the escape. But first, they needed to ensure they had enough money to live comfortably for a good while. Marcus suggested convincing Claudia to make him the sole account holder. He advised Madeline to do the same with Thomas. She hesitated at first, but then agreed. She used the argument of a possible medical emergency involving Harper, and Thomas, distracted, signed without questioning. They also worked on gaining access to the family safe, where they kept family jewels and a considerable amount of cash. Madeline took the keys to a locksmith and had them duplicated. Within a short time, she and Marcus had full access to their spouse's money. But it wasn't just that. They created new emails and bought 2 prepaid phones. Everything was done with extreme care. Every call, every message, every step. They reached the point of simulating arguments at home so that their respective partners would believe they were going through normal marital crises. It was a daily performance. Over time, Madeline began to see herself as someone far beyond the woman betrayed by boredom. She considered herself bold, strategic, ready to take control of her own life. She started looking at herself in the mirror with a different expression. Wore different clothes, changed her perfume, smiled more. And even though she knew she was deceiving a husband who never stopped her from doing anything, she justified everything with the argument that being frustrated was also a form of betrayal. Marcus, in turn, said he was tired of being treated like a stranger at home. And when she asked if he would really leave everything, he swore he would. With details. He even knew the name of the hotel where they would meet before boarding. The escape day was set more than a month in advance. The countdown was kept secret. Every time Madeline looked at Thomas in the living room, she felt a mix of guilt and relief that it was all about to end. Her messages with Marcus were full of promises, intimate photos, and plans for the first days away. Madeline even started practicing the excuses she would use with Harper. She believed the daughter would understand eventually. She thought that if the initial pain was strong, the future freedom would compensate. What she never considered was, what if all of that had been observed from the very beginning? Her trust in Marcus was total. She saw him as a partner in war. When he said Claudia never suspected anything, Madeline believed. When he claimed nobody suspected the bank transactions, she accepted without question. The last piece of the plan was simple. On the marked day, she would go to the bank, withdraw the money from the safe, pick up the tickets Marcus left in an envelope in a gym locker, and meet him at the departure point. Everything meticulously planned. To Madeline, it represented more than an escape. It was the symbol of the liberation she had long sought, the right to be happy, even if it meant breaking with everything she had built so far. What she didn't yet know was that, the moment she put her hands on the safe handle, the whole castle would collapse. Because while she plotted in secret, another plot even more precise was unfolding right under her eyes. It was on a regular morning that Thomas realized something was wrong. He was picking out socks from the lower drawer of the closet when, by accident, he knocked over a shoebox that Madeline usually kept at the back. Trying to put it back, he noticed something rigid inside. Curious, he opened it. An unknown cell phone, with a simple password and some visible messages on the lock screen. Just reading the first few lines was enough for everything to fall apart. The conversations with Marcus were there. The declarations, the plans, even a clear reference to the day she would withdraw the money from the safe. He didn't scream, didn't break anything. But from that moment on, the pain turned into strategy. The man she thought was too distant was about to become something she never imagined facing. Thomas took a deep breath and started acting. He didn't tell anyone, didn't vent to friends. He preferred the solitude of contained anger. He began observing Madeline's movements with a scary calmness. Her excuses, quick calls, false smiles after coming out of the bathroom saying she was taking a shower, every detail was mentally recorded. And when he was sure that the relationship with Marcus was more than an affair, he took the next step. He decided to seek out the only person who would fully understand what he was going through, Claudia Cole, Marcus's wife. They met in an empty parking lot. She was nervous, her eyes full of doubt, like someone who already knew, but never wanted to accept. Thomas was direct. He showed screenshots, talked about the audio files, the messages. Claudia took time to react, but didn't cry. She simply asked what they would do with that information. He answered without hesitation, "We're going to turn the tables." She nodded, and for the first time in months, the two felt like they had some control over their lives again. The plan was born there, between two betrayed individuals who, despite being hurt, decided not to let their spouses run away without consequences. In the following days, Thomas installed discreet listening devices around the house. He bought pens with micro-recorders, placed one in the home office, another near the landline, and the last one beside the bedside table. It was painful to listen to the whispers, the stifled laughter, the fantasy of a fresh start between Madeline and Marcus, but he endured it. He needed to hear everything. Claudia did the same at home, and soon the two started exchanging information like longtime partners. Scripts, dates, password combinations, all revealed like pieces of a puzzle they silently assembled. While pretending to be normal at home, Thomas and Claudia met at alternate times, away from curious eyes. They elaborated a sequence of actions with coldness. The money would be transferred discreetly to protected accounts, the account ownership changed, and the safe accesses revoked. Each movement would be carried out days before the escape date. They knew they had little time and that any mistake would ruin everything. But they were motivated by something greater than revenge, dignity. What hurt most wasn't the fact of being cheated on. It was being deceived with such conviction. Thomas also began gathering evidence that could be useful legally if needed. He saved conversations, photographs of altered documents, and meeting dates. Weeks passed, and Thomas realized he no longer felt dominated by pain, but by a cold clarity. Every dinner with Madeline was a performance. He watched her expressions, gestures, and disguised absences. And she, trapped in her own lie, believed everything was under control. Claudia maintained the same stance. She greeted Marcus with calm smiles, asked how his day was, offered wine after his shower. What they didn't know was that they were being led straight into the trap they themselves had created. The difference was that now there were two scripts running, the escape plan of a cheating couple, and the silent justice plan of the betrayed. To complete the setup, Thomas programmed real-time bank notifications and created a digital copy of the contents of the family safe. Behind the scenes, the board was ready. Every piece in place. All that remained was to wait for Madeline's final move. He knew exactly when she would try to withdraw the money. He had already seen the message in which she arranged with Marcus the time of their airport meeting. And that was what he wanted, for her to believe, until the last second, that she was winning. Because only those who think they have everything are capable of feeling the weight of losing it all at once. The day Madeline had waited for came like the beginning of a new life. She woke up before the alarm, sat on the edge of the bed, and spent a few minutes in silence. Thomas was still asleep, turned to the other side. She watched him, and for a moment almost hesitated. Almost. But soon pushed that feeling aside with a firm thought: it was too late. She got up, dressed carefully, grabbed the carry-on bag she had hidden in the car trunk days earlier, and left without saying anything. She had a ready-made excuse: an urgent meeting at work. Thomas pretended to believe, and she didn't notice the restrained relief on his face. She drove to the bank, greeting the employees naturally, handed over the documents, and waited for the safe to be unlocked. The manager accompanied her to the security room, entered the code, turned the main key, and gave her space to open the second lock. Madeline trembled inside, but kept her expression steady. She inserted the key and turned it. As soon as she opened the compartment, she expected to see envelopes with money, jewelry, small valuable objects she had helped store over the years. Instead, there was only a letter. A single folded sheet. She recognized Thomas's handwriting before even opening it. And right there, in that moment, everything stopped. She read it in silence. Thomas wrote clearly. He explained that he had discovered everything weeks before, that he knew about the affair, the phones, the meetings, the plans. He revealed that he had taken the money before her and transferred it to accounts where she would never have access. He warned that he had already spoken to her boss, mentioning the intimate meetings during work hours, and told her that Harper, her daughter, would receive an email with copies of the messages exchanged between her and Marcus. At the end, he said that Claudia was also aware of everything and that together they had decided to disappear from the traders' lives, with the money, peace, and dignity. The final sentence stayed etched in her mind like an open wound: "You destroyed everything for something that never existed. Now you'll discover what it's like to live with the consequences." Madeline stood there, looking at the empty safe, holding the letter with trembling hands. The manager asked if everything was okay. She forced a smile, said yes, closed the box, and left. She walked to the car like someone carrying tons on their shoulders. She sat in the driver's seat and started the car without a destination. She tried calling Marcus. Voicemail. Tried again. Nothing. Sent a message. No response. Decided to go to the hotel where he had left the tickets. The envelope wasn't in the locker. No sign of Marcus. Only then did she understand: he had also been left behind. She ran to the apartment where he used to spend the nights, claiming he was resolving work issues. She knocked on the door and was greeted by a receptionist who said the room had been vacated in the early hours. She returned home like someone returning from a battlefield. When she arrived, the door opened slowly. Harper was standing there, eyes red. Madeline tried to explain, but her daughter only handed her a copy of the letter Thomas had left with her. The words were underlined in highlighter: "Truth sets free. And sometimes, it frees others from you." Harper didn't yell, didn't make a scene. She simply said she would stay with a friend and hoped that one day Madeline would understand the extent of the disappointment. Madeline was left alone, staring at the wall, motionless. The phone rang later. It was the office. She was informed that she had been suspended indefinitely under investigation for inappropriate conduct. The rumors were already spreading through the corridors. The messages had leaked. Social media became a judgment field. A few hours after the downfall, Madeline received a call. It was Marcus. His voice was hoarse, lacking strength. He said he had lost everything, that the accounts were empty, and that his company had just fired him for misusing work hours. He ended the sentence by saying she had promised a new life and left him to sink. After an uncomfortable silence, he asked them to meet to talk, at a quiet cafe. Madeline hesitated, but agreed. She was as broken as he was, and perhaps she needed to hear it as much as he needed to say it. They sat across from each other at a small table in the back of the cafe. Both were defeated. Marcus broke the silence first. "You destroyed my life. What did you do?" Madeline took a deep breath and replied with harshness, "Don't act like a victim. I lost everything too." Then she told him. She said Harper had left, that the letter from Thomas was a crushing blow, that her account was blocked and the safe was empty. She said she had received a formal suspension notice at work and that her colleagues treated her like a virus. Do you think I was spared? I was thrown to the ground too. The conversation turned into an argument. Voices rose, eyes met like daggers. One's pain met the other's pride. When they left, they parted ways in opposite directions, without looking back. 3 weeks after the storm, while Madeline faced the emptiness and Marcus tried to survive with the help of relatives, a new chapter unfolded far away. Thomas and Claudia were in Mexico. They disappeared discreetly, leaving everything behind: house, routine, past, and vanished without telling anyone. They left no traces on social media, didn't answer any more calls, and the few acquaintances who knew something respected their silence. It was as if they had been erased from the map. But the truth was different. They were more alive than ever. They rented a simple house, facing the sea. They lived far from luxury, but full of freedom. They laughed together, cooked together, walked hand in hand through narrow streets of cities they had never visited before. They were two survivors who had found each other at the most improbable moment and decided to turn pain into a fresh start. The money they withdrew didn't become a symbol of revenge, but of freedom. And the love that bloomed from someone else's betrayal was the only true one that actually flourished. While Madeline reviewed her own choices and Marcus faded away from everyone's lives, Thomas and Claudia built, brick by brick, a new story. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. They had wounds, difficult memories, and days of silence, but when they looked at each other, they knew they had done the right thing for themselves. Life sometimes takes such radical turns that yesterday's villains become just the consequence of wrong choices, and those who seem to be background characters transform into the only ones who truly knew how to start over. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.